In today's video, I'm going to be discussing how you can protect your crypto portfolio ahead of the biggest day for crypto of the entire year, which is the US federal election. In fact, it might be the biggest event for crypto of the entire decade. I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but honestly, there are so many ramifications of this election that we're going to unpack in today's video, which are not only going to affect prices in the short term, but also the long-term future of the industry. Both candidates have a very different opinion on how the industry should operate. They've made very different promises. In today's video, we're going to dive into both of those scenarios and look at if Trump wins, what could happen to price and what could happen to crypto? And conversely, if Kamala wins, what could happen to price and what could happen to crypto? And then at the end of the video, I will be going through my personal strategy, how I am setting up my portfolio. I did make some moves this morning to hedge against a certain outcome, which I'll discuss, and why I did make those moves. And I'll also talk about some of the things that I am implementing over the next 48 hours to make sure that I capitalize on whatever way the election goes, and I have a plan no matter either way the election goes. Because look, right now, to be honest, even though Trump has a slight lead in the betting markets and in the polls, it's very, very close. It's roughly 50-50. It feels like a bit of a coin toss. And for that reason, you have to be prepared for both eventualities. So in today's video, we will be deep diving into what both eventualities actually mean for your bags. Is Kamala winning actually that bad for crypto? If she wins, what could happen to prices? We'll discuss how you can actually play the market if that happens. And if Trump wins, how do you position? Do you just ape as soon as Trump wins? Do you look to position now? We're going to get into all of that in today's video. So it's going to be a very important one. If you do enjoy this type of content and early crypto alpha, make sure to subscribe down below and click that post notification bell if you haven't already. If you are part of the Deutscher Noti gang, comment Noti gang in the comments below. I want to see who has actually turned their notifications on. I'll be going and I'll be love-hearting a bunch of comments and replying to members of the Noti gang. Before we get into the scenarios, firstly Trump, then Kamala, then my strategy, let's firstly just give a quick market update. Bitcoin right now is recovering a little bit after we saw quite a heavy de-risk / liquidation cascade, which I discussed in yesterday's video, which resulted in a pullback from the 73K region, so flirting with an all-time high break back down to range high. We actually have started to flirt with the idea of breaking above range high again, but we're basically just chopping directly under the previous two lower highs, which obviously are really key levels that Bitcoin needs to hold above. I've outlined this via the dotted line here if you want to maintain bullish momentum. On the total 3 index, which is the altcoin index, we have started to see a breakdown. Alts are getting hit much harder than Bitcoin right now because I feel like altcoin investors are hedging against uncertainty. And we discussed this yesterday. If you hold a large crypto portfolio, if you have a lot of exposure to the market, what is the easiest thing to do during times of uncertainty? Well, it's de-risking altcoins, because the first thing you're going to do if your plan is to de-risk is get rid of all your leverage positions and then offload some of your altcoins. And that's why alts are getting hit more than Bitcoin right now, because people that are looking to hedge against a Kamala win and de-risk against a potential negative outcome, they're selling off their altcoins. I'll get into later in the video whether I think it's too late to de-risk. Spoiler alert, I think it is. I think you've kind of missed that window, but there are things you can do to hedge if you're not sufficiently hedged. We'll be discussing that as we get into the Kamala and the strategy section of today's video. But even though I'm showing you a couple of charts right now just to give you your bearings on the market, I'm going to admit something. You can basically throw away all your TA for the next few days because the election is literally all that matters. I'm not really buying into technical analysis this week. TA is super effective when people are paying attention to it. It kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's why TA exists, and that's why I do think it has some efficacy when certain psychological levels are being adhered to. I do think during an election, when there is so much volatility, when there's liquidations either side, when there's people hedging, de-risking, it's just super hard to get a read on the market, and TA is really not going to help you that much in this market. The main thing it's going to help you for, and we'll discuss this later in the strategy section, is stop losses. In the event of Kamala winning, you can use TA to set stop losses under previous lows. Those wick lows from August on a lot of alts are very interesting levels to set stops if you just want a bit of downside protection. But that's pretty much the only reason I'm using TA at the moment. I'm not really using it to validate any buy signals, any sell signals this week, because the election trumps all. The election is all that matters this week, and that's why this week most of my content is going to be election based. I'm not becoming a political LARP, but at the end of the day, like, I can give you altcoins right now and we could talk about, TA, and I can LARP about the crypto market, but the reality is the fate of our bags largely does lie on this election, at least in the short to midterm. And it kind of feels like right now, maybe this is a bit of an extreme example, but it kind of feels like we're walking into the casino and we're chucking half of our portfolios on red, and this is like the period when the wheel is about to spin and we're just waiting for the outcome. That is literally what it feels like. It feels like our entire portfolios are being left to chance a little bit, and I'll discuss why I think that's the case throughout this video, but it kind of feels like a gamble. So for me, I am in this kind of nervous anticipation mode. This market doesn't usually faze me. I'm usually pretty resolute, emotionless this year. We've had major drawdowns on alts. 2022, I made videos pretty much every day, despite the market going down and down and down. It didn't really faze me. I must admit though, this election is phasing me just a little bit more than usual, just because I feel like we have a lot riding on it. We've built so much momentum throughout the year. Alts are on the cusp of something really big, I think, if Trump wins. And, personally, I have a lot of exposure to the market, not just on the liquid spot market, but, I'm also a content creator. That side of the business is affected by the market. I also invest in angel rounds. Unvested tokens are obviously subject to drawdowns, even though you can't quantify them in terms of the liquid market. Every single founder in the industry right now will be feeling similar. Every single person with a crypto business or exposure to a crypto product, service, exchange, whatever, is going to be feeling this right now because it is all impacted by this election. So maybe I personally feel like I'm more exposed than some of you watching the video, but that is part of the reason for my nerves at the moment. I am planned for it. I'll talk about what my plan is. I'll talk about exactly what I did in terms of making some moves this morning to kind of hedge against the Kamala victory scenario, which we'll run through. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm nervous, and it doesn't change the fact that, spoiler alert, a Trump win is likely going to be much better for the markets. But let's actually unpack that now. So firstly, I want to discuss what happens if Trump actually wins. Secondly, we're going to discuss what happens if Kamala wins. We're going to run through both scenarios. As I said, it's pretty much a coin toss, so you've got to be prepared for both eventualities. And then thirdly, we're going to discuss what I am doing to prepare. Firstly, let's go through the Trump victory scenario. This is something we discussed in depth in the Discord AMA yesterday with Fabian. We did like an hour and a half AMA and we went through all the game theory. So if you're in the Mars High Club, I highly recommend listening to that. It's great content and it will probably help you navigate. But I'll try and give you a TLDR of some of those points in today's video. Mars High Club, of course, is in the description if you do want to come and be a member. We're going to be doing a lot of things this week throughout the election, like live streams, like live AMAs, because the market's likely going to be very volatile. So if you want a bit of hand-holding through what is going to be a very volatile week, come join the Mars High Club. We have a bunch of analysts in there alongside myself who are going to help guide you through this. There might be some slightly sleepless nights. I'm pretty locked into a nice sleep and gym routine, but that might have to be broken on Wednesday here because, and also maybe Tuesday, depending on what jurisdiction you are in, just due to the fact that there's likely going to be a lot of volatility and we're going to want to be live streaming and there to support members, and I might even do a YouTube live stream. Let's see how it goes, but that's something that is also on the cards. So let's go through the Trump scenario. Looking right now, Trump is the favorite on Polymarket, 57% to 42%. He's also the leader on other major bookmakers. He is also the leader in most of the polls. There are some polls that are favoring a Kamala victory, but if you look at the aggregate and the average polls, Trump is slightly leading. So I think it's safe to assume the probabilities are still leaning towards a Trump victory. Now, you can assert that Pennsylvania is the state that is basically got all of the eyes on it right now. It's one of the swing states that could genuinely go either way. It's historically been a blue state. Obviously, Trump did win that in 2016. It then flipped blue again in 2020, and now it's in contention. So that is a state that, although Trump is leading right now, that's likely going to have a big say due to the 19 electoral votes that it does hold on the outcome of this election, alongside some of the other swing states. Let's take a look at them right now. Trump is leading Arizona. Trump is leading Georgia, Nevada. He's just leading Pennsylvania. Harris is leading Wisconsin, and Harris is leading Michigan. Assuming Harris gets Wisconsin and Michigan, then Trump is going to want to win Pennsylvania and Nevada. He has to win them basically to win the election, unless there's another surprise on a traditionally Dem state. But at the end of the day, the swing states, these 6 states, are likely what the election is going to come down to. The good news is, if you are a Trump supporter and if you hold crypto, you probably are, because it's likely going to be much better for our bags. Trump is leading in all of these categories according to betting markets and most polls. But I must say that there is conflicting data coming from some of the polls. Obviously, a lot of them have small sample sizes, and there are certain variables which makes betting markets a little bit unpredictable, although they are based on mathematics and based on where public support is going. They aren't necessarily the be-all and end-all due to the fact that there probably are more speculators in the Trump camp on a website like Polymarket, but at the same time, there are people hedging against the Trump win by betting on Kamala, which we'll talk about later, which may actually be the reason why Kamala's odds did start spiking a little bit. She was 37%, actually 33% at one point. Trump was 67%, and she's ended up really coming in over the last few days off the back of some positive polling numbers for Harris, but also off the back of, in my opinion, what is a bit of a hedging event, because crypto participants, especially whales that hold a lot of crypto and are in the crypto industry, they're betting on Harris as a potential hedge where they can at least make a 2 to 3x on Harris winning, which can cover some of their losses if altcoins do respond badly. So that is something that's at play that might be manipulating the data. So you got to take this data with a grain of salt, but I think we can largely assert that Trump is the favorite right now. Fred Krueger goes through a few reasons here. You can pause the video and look through them. I think it was a good tweet outlining why he thinks Trump wins. He says by a pretty clear margin. My gut feel is also that Trump wins, but today's video isn't really to speculate. It's, what do we do in either scenario and how does the market react in either scenario? Because that is the important thing, right? You should always have conditional plans outlined based on certain events. So if Trump wins, this is what I do. This is what I'm doing now to prepare for that eventuality. If Kamala wins, this is what I'll do. This is what I'm doing now to prepare for that eventuality. That's what we're going to get into today, because at the end of the day, we can't determine the election outcome, but we can determine our actions and preemptively make some moves based on probabilities. I do think if Trump wins, the market will respond very well. So to answer the question of what happens if Trump wins, I think alts perform very well, because what's happened is people have been de-risking altcoins because they're basically trying to hedge a little bit. As I said, if the market's uncertain, what are you going to do? You're going to sell altcoins and wind down leverage positions before you start touching assets like Bitcoin. Conversely, if Trump wins, that trade has to unwind the other way. So a lot of people that de-risked alts are going to be forced to jump back in. That's going to cause a real push to the upside. A lot of people hedge shorting and a lot of people shorting the market in the event of a Kamala victory are going to be blown out, which could genuinely result in a big altcoin squeeze to the upside. So that is why I do think Trump winning, it's more bullish for alts than Bitcoin. I've heard a lot of people say, if Trump wins, I see Bitcoin dominance going up and up and up because Trump's pro-Bitcoin. Yes, Bitcoin's going to go up, but I think the alts are major beneficiaries. So if you are betting on Trump, being in altcoins is the number way to get exposure to Trump, because I think they perform really well. The other thing is, we know Trump is probably going to be more lenient when it comes to scrutiny regarding the SEC, Operation Choke Point, where the Democrats were really clamping down on cryptocurrency. I think Trump, at least by what he's saying, and my gut feel is that he's not going to be nearly as harsh as the Kamala administration would be. He promised that he's going to end Kamala's war on crypto and Bitcoin. Whether he sticks to that promise is another topic of discussion, but I think the market inherently will take this at face value, and as a result, altcoins are going to perform well. I mean, it's not necessarily even about what they do. A lot of people are focused on, if Trump does this and if Kamala does that, what if they don't stick to their word? That's not what matters. What matters is market perception. And the market perception is this. If Trump wins, he's going to be more lenient on Bitcoin. He's going to be more pro-crypto. He's going to go after less altcoins. The market's vibe is also that if Kamala wins, she's going to go after cryptocurrency. She's not going to be as supportive as Bitcoin, and we're likely going to see a continuation of choke point. Basically, what we've seen over the last few years with FTX and a bunch of DeFi protocols, etc. So, by virtue of what the market thinks, and it's what the market thinks at the end of the day that matters, not even the reality, I do think that will reflect pretty quickly in altcoin prices, which is why I think if Trump wins, you will see that strong reaction. And the market is telling you all you need to know about who it favors in terms of the winner here, because we've seen Bitcoin price has basically been 1-to-1 correlated with the betting markets. Bitcoin price has rallied, right? Basically, every single time we've seen a rally in Trump's odds, Bitcoin's rallied. Every single time we've seen a pullback in Trump's odds, Bitcoin's pulled back. So we saw a massive pump. And then this week, as Kamala's odds have gone up, Bitcoin has started to go down. Even in the last 24 hours, as Trump has started to uptick a little bit from 54% back to 58, Bitcoin has also bounced from 67 back to 68.5. So we are seeing the market hyper responsive right now to the Trump and Kamala election probabilities. I can assert based on that information that the market is literally telling you a Trump victory is going to be bullish and a Kamala victory is going to be bearish for markets. You don't really need to overcomplicate it. We have the data. It's in front of us, and that is likely going to play out if one of those candidates win. I do like this post here from Hypersphere to wrap up the Trump side of things, and then we'll get into the Kamala side of things, saying, the destination is clear, but the path is uncertain. We've said before that our house view is that the US elections are a clearing event. If Trump wins, altcoins outperform almost immediately. I agree. If Harris triumphs, we get a sell-off and then a year-end melt-up. So basically saying short-term sell-off, longer-term price appreciation. I'll discuss what I think in a second. I'm roughly aligned, but there's a bit of nuance to that. Both candidates are bullish Bitcoin. I agree. They're both bullish Bitcoin because they both agree we need to spend more on reindustrialization, reshoring, and rearmament. As PTJ said last week, all roads lead to inflation, but the hardest thing for traders is figuring out how much of the money in the market today is purely event-driven versus sticky. That's a good point. A lot of speculative capital is in the market. And even on the Trump side of things, a lot of speculative capital through the Bitcoin ETFs has been injected in order to bet on a Trump victory, as lots of, especially TradFi guys, view Bitcoin as a Trump proxy. If Trump wins, we like blue chip altcoins joining for a trade once momentum is underway rather than trying to bottom tick. We like the setup going into year end better than the setup in Q1. The latter was driven by the Bitcoin ETF, while this feels stronger because it's around the US election with gold and stock market all-time highs. I agree. If Trump wins, you probably see an accelerated cycle versus Kamala winning. So you probably see a pump much sooner. You probably see more of an aggressive move. Now that can be led with shakeouts. So if Trump does win, what may happen is you may see like a big squeeze, right? An initial reaction, which is met by over leverage, which may result in a big cascade, a wick down. That's your chance to get in if you weren't positioned. I think a lot of you are, but for the ones that aren't positioned to crypto, that would be your chance really to scoop up alt on that wick down. Things don't go up in a straight line. And then I'm expecting strong continuation into the end of the year. That is my setup for Trump winning. I still don't think an altcoin peak is happening until next year, 2025, Q1, Q2 is roughly my thinking right now. But certainly in the shorter term, it's much more bullish. Let's look at the contrary, which is Kamala winning. What do I think about what will happen to the market if Kamala wins and how would I play it? So if Kamala wins, I want to make this clear. I still think crypto performs well from a macro point of view because irrespective of who wins the election, the two most important constituents of price action in crypto right now are global liquidity and macro easing conditions, which are vastly more important than who is the president. However, I do think Kamala winning still sets the timeline back, especially on altcoins, around 2 to 3 months. I spoke on the AMA with Fabian yesterday. He said maybe 3 to 4 weeks. Whatever time frame it is, it sets the market back a little bit. You likely get that initial dump, that initial sell-off, specifically coins that are potentially under SEC scrutiny. You can see the list here on CryptoRank, coins alleged as securities by the SEC. There's lots of majors in here. There's lots of DeFi coins in here. These are potentially coins which react badly to a Kamala win because there's potentially going to be scrutiny against them. Solana probably does, unfortunately. I hold a lot of Solana, fall into that category. I recently did de-risk a little bit of my Solana position heading into the election. There's likely going to be a lot of buying opportunities on some of these coins if she does win, but it's one thing to keep note of. The market is likely going to react badly to that, and that's why you will see a drop in alts. And conversely, because alts are dropping, and I don't think Bitcoin has as much of a reason to drop. It's a commodity. Kamala's actually said she's bullish on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin outperforms on a relative scale versus altcoins until at least 2025. I still think if Kamala wins, alts perform well, but the timeline is elongated into 2025, and the pump will not be as aggressive, in my opinion. I think if Trump wins, you genuinely have a case for a 200K, 300, 400K Bitcoin. And a very strong altcoin market. If Kamala wins, Bitcoin's still going to hit 100K. Maybe you don't have those upper echelon bull case price targets of 200-300K anymore. Maybe you don't have those 10x, 5x altcoin market price targets anymore. I do think it puts a damper on the market. It doesn't mean we can't make money. there will be obviously opportunities as a lot of these coins come down, especially in the early days and weeks, to scoop up and make some profits, potentially easy profits. But if the upside potentially isn't quite there if Kamala wins. So that's why I'm firmly a believer that if Trump wins, it's going to be better for crypto. I kind of did a summary here on my thoughts about how these things impact the market. Kobe said that Bitcoin's going to 100K no matter what. I agree. But what the outcome of the election will affect is A, how price reacts in the short term. Trump will likely cause a much bigger pump in the short term, and Kamala will likely cause a dump in the short term. 2, Bitcoin dominance. I expect a Kamala win will affect alts more than Bitcoin, as many have de-risked pre-election and will likely FOMO back in if Trump wins on the contrary side. And 3, the regulatory environment long-term, because Trump is probably going to be a lot more lenient on crypto, is definitely stronger in the Trump camp for especially things with rev share, like the DeFi coins, the SEC coins that have been, labeled as securities or been attacked in the past. Those coins are going to have a harder time under Kamala than under Trump. The one thing to keep in mind is that no matter who wins, every single time we've had an election, Bitcoin has been significantly higher post-election. As I said before, the macro and global liquidity situation, the easing policy, is much more important ultimately for the market in the long run. In the short term, though, it will affect the market, and Trump is more inherently bullish in the short term. And if Kamala wins, it puts a bit of a cap on the potential outcome. So that is my rough thoughts on what's going to happen. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a framework. Now, let's talk about strategy, what you can actually do. I think for a lot of you, you're probably already very exposed to the market just based on my Discord, my YouTube comments, my Twitter. I think a lot of you own a lot of coins. So I don't think I really need to tell you if you don't own coins, it's risky because you're not getting exposure to a Trump victory. I feel like a lot of you already have exposure to the market, but if you don't have exposure to the market and you are sitting heavier in stables, because I know some are in that camp, I think even if Trump wins, you probably don't need to FOMO in now. Like maybe you can buy this dip a little bit, but it is risky. Like I bought a little bit of spot yesterday, but not much, just a small amount on certain coins because I'm already really exposed to the market, as I discussed earlier. If you're not, however, you can kind of maybe get a little bit in now and then wait for the election. And if Trump does win, you will probably still see a shakeout at some point, even if it's met by an initial pump. That's when you're probably going to get your entries. I want to focus, though, more on the Kamala outcome because I feel like for most of you, the issue is going to be if Kamala wins. And I want to talk about what you could maybe do on that side instead of focusing too much on Trump because we know Trump would be the bull case here. The first thing is, in terms of trading, I really liked this tweet from Eugene. Theme of the day, no positions. I agree. No new leverage positions. I actually closed some leverage positions today. I didn't want to, but I just really wanted to de-lever and make sure I wasn't playing into what is likely going to be a volatile market. And I've been saying for the past 3 weeks, don't use leverage, don't touch leverage. So hopefully none of you are in leverage, but leverage is a great tool and it's probably going to be great for once the market decides its directionality after the election. And I'm definitely interested in playing that game. If Kamala wins, it's a chance for me to lever up and actually go big. And if Trump wins, it's a chance to take advantage of maybe that initial 1 to 2 pullbacks. Hopefully we do get them. And those could be really, really easy trades. And if not, just play long continuation on pullbacks into the H4 noodle or the EMAs and in conflicts with major supports. So that's going to be quite a good strategy to use leverage. But for now, I'm not touching it and I'm trying to stay away and I'm not opening many new trades at all. There's a strategy here which I actually took today with a little bit of size. And ideally you would have done this a week ago, but it's never too late to do this. If you are really, really, really exposed to crypto, so if you're similar to me, obviously I have some business risk alongside personal holdings, which is substantial, you can actually bet on Kamala as a hedge, right? Because you've kind of missed the de-risk window a little bit. If you have 0% stablecoins, I don't mind even de-risking now. But I think most of you, if you watch these videos, you'll know it's wise to hold around 20% stables. I talked about that in my portfolio video as an essential, and I've been speaking about that for months. Always trying to hold around 20% stables in this market. I personally hold 30%. I've upped that. I'll speak about that in a second to 40% heading into the election. So a bit heavier in stables than I would usually be. If you don't have any, if you're literally sitting at 0 or sub 10%, you can look at de-risking now. Problem is, you've kind of missed the de-risk window on a lot of alts. So for some of you, it could make sense to bet on Kamala as a hedge. You're going to get 2.2x or 2.3x on your money. So 50K becomes like 115K or something around that, 110K, just to give you the numbers. So for some of you, you can actually hedge against your market exposure, not by de-risking, but actually betting on Kamala. That, to me, is a better option than shorting. What some people do is they hedge short using perps. The problem is, due to the volatility of the market over the next couple of weeks, you can get blown out on those trades. So for me, hedging perp short, which is what you would usually do in a more neutral market, for me, just isn't a viable strategy. So I would prefer to actually bet on Harris as a hedge. And that's actually what I did earlier today. I basically had my stablecoin weightings around 30%, which they've been like that for a long, long time, the last few months at least. I put 5%, so back down to 25, into a Kamala bet. If Kamala wins, my net stable amount then goes to 40%. So in the event Kamala wins, and I hope that doesn't happen, but if it happens, I'll be holding 40% stables. To me, that's a good amount of stables because what it's going to do, Kamala winning doesn't ruin altcoins forever. All it does is it creates buying opportunities. So you're going to need to be capitalized in order to take advantage of them. So by Kamala winning, if my hedge does end up playing out and I up my stables from 30 to 40% via her winning, I now have 40% stables to play with and buy some wicks on a lot of alts and DCA into a lot of alts over the next month because I think altcoins still do really well next year, irrespective. As I said, the global situation right now is more important. The Bitcoin all-time high is more important than a little bit of regulatory FUD. But I definitely think, as I said, it limits things, especially in the short term. And it would likely create a lot of opportunities. So if you're a long-term investor, you're probably not panicking right now. You can just sit in your portfolios because what you have to remember is gains aren't realized until they're realized. If you're mentally prepared for a 20%, 30% drawdown on your portfolio, you don't really need to do much apart from just maintaining a long-term view, holding through it, and if you do have stables, then you can actually take advantage and buy even more. So if Kamala wins, I put on that hedge, just in case. It's a small hedge, it's 5%, but it's going to get me up to that 40% stable mark. If she loses, my stablecoin weighting, because I'll lose that bet, drops down to 25%. In that event, my alts are probably pumping, and I'm making so much money on altcoins that I don't really care about losing the 5%. So that's where the hedge comes in, right? 25% in the event of a Trump victory is a decent amount to hold because I can basically get in on those wicks as I discussed and even play uptrend continuation on a lot of alts. You get a lot of breakout setups. If we go back into easy mode, there'll be a lot of trading opportunities. So that's when 25% is going to be valuable. I want more though. If Kamala wins, I want 40 because I feel like I'll need more stables as protection. If Trump wins, 25 is great. So for me, the hedge made sense. Does it make sense for you? It entirely depends on your strategy. As I said, for a lot of you, just sitting back and letting the market play out and take your long-term approach is probably going to be what you need to do this week. Don't capitulate or FOMO or sell all your bags or panic. Panic selling is not what I do right now. The de-risk window was a few days ago. For those with literally 0% in stables, I don't mind the idea of de-risking now or hedging on a poly market or another website in order to get some exposure to Kamala winning. That is obviously on the thesis that Trump winning is bullish and Kamala winning is bearish, but I think the market is showing that, the data is showing that, the sentiment is showing that, the price action with the amount of hedging going on right now and the subsequent response is showing that as well. So I'd be very surprised if it doesn't play out that way. That's why I think the Kamala hedge can make sense in some cases. The other thing you can do is set stop losses. So if you do want to just protect against downside a little bit, you can pick an amount that you're willing to lose and set some stops. Problem is we're likely going to see some wicks. So you might get stopped out on a wick, which sucks because price like instantly might ping back higher. So I would, as I mentioned earlier in the video, try and at least line up some sort of technical confluence, something substantial. The wick low, I think from August are the main levels for potential invalidation on trades. That's basically just going to protect you if the market nukes from losing your entire portfolio. I don't think Kamala winning is going to nuke the altcoin market by 50%. I do think Bitcoin could go to the low 60s and alts could drop like 20 to 30%. That's my like bear case if Kamala wins. And if Trump wins, my case is probably Bitcoin all-time high and an instant 20 to 30% rally in alts. So basically, I think if it's basically the exact same outcome, just either side, pumping 20% of Trump wins, dumping 20% of Kamala wins. keep something in mind though. This isn't like a sports match, like Real Madrid versus Barcelona. As soon as a whistle blows, Barcelona wins, and then you get paid out. The election is adaptive, so the odds will be shifting in real time over a 48-hour period, and we might not know the winner for like 48 to 72 hours later. We'll start to get a good idea on Wednesday, especially later in the day, once some of the states start announcing, and the betting odds are going to reflect this because that's going to be priced into the market in real time, and the probabilities will shift based on what happens. So it's actually adaptive, which makes the market probably very volatile, because what's going to happen is Bitcoin is going to, and altcoins, they're going to react in real time based on the swings. They're not just going to like, it's not like Trump's announced as the president and the market moons. If Trump has an early lead, the market's going to start running, right? And it means that like when Trump's actually announced, you could get a sell-off because people have already like priced that in. So it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very adaptive, and it's something I'm going to be talking a lot about in the Discord. And I'm going to be pretty much there all day because there's going to be a lot of like interim trades and shenanigans going on. It's going to be wild. I'm nervous with anticipation. It's going to be absolutely wild. It's not like a normal event. It's like a 2-day bonanza of volatility and constant changes and prices shifting to reflect new odds. If you think back to the past 2 elections, the odds actually shifted as well from one candidate to another, like in terms of the discrepancy between them. So you might even see Trump at a 40% probability at one point, and then he goes up to 80, and then back to 50, then up to 70. Like, that's how crazy the volatility can be, especially if it starts coming down to these final swing states. And they're likely going to be the last to announce, like, you know, your Pennsylvanias, etc. If Pennsylvania locks in as a Trump victory, you might see his odds rocket to 80% because that's the main state that's in contention right now in terms of the swing states. So it's going to be crazy. Hopefully today's video helps you prepare a little bit. If you are in the Discord, of course, I'll be here to help guide you over the next couple of days. You can ask questions. I'll be very active in there answering and helping, you know, guide you guys throughout the process. I'll also help on the YouTube channel. I'll be uploading tomorrow, probably the day after, probably every single day to help guide you. Might even do a live stream at one point. So it's going to be insane. Buckle up. It's the biggest week for crypto of the year, maybe even of the decade. And yeah, I'm really excited for this week to be over because the anticipation is frankly killing me right now. But I've done all I can to protect myself. I've got my plan. I suggest you do the same, and I will see you tomorrow. See you later. Peace out.